to Performance Analytics and Reporting Office Hours. We are very glad that you're able to join us for this session. We do this session every 2 weeks, and for those of you who are new, welcome. And for those of you who have joined us before, welcome back. My name is David Van Houston. I work for the Now Intelligence team. Now Intelligence consists of several products, including performance analytics, predictive intelligence, and reporting, for example. We will be expanding in the future with additional products, but today's session is mainly staged still around performance analytics and reporting. But before we get started, I'm going to run you through a few logistical items for today's session. Remember, this session is for you. This is your opportunity to get some fresh ideas, gain a better understanding of performance analytics or reporting or dashboarding or the interactive filters, and get some practical advice from some of the world's experts in the field. There may be cases where we can't solve a technical issue or get into details about your instance, so we may ask you to open up a case on high, or we may need to follow it up offline. And that way we can cover as many questions as possible during this session. Please feel free to ask questions via the Zoom Q&A panel that you see somewhere in your Zoom interface, so that you can open up those questions and that we can answer either by typing them or we can answer them live. And that way we basically retain a repository of questions being asked and answers being given. We also then can ask follow-up questions to clarify, so we can ensure we're answering appropriately. We do have quite a few people on the line, so please keep yourself on mute unless you're asking a question, but although we prefer you just typing it through the Q&A panel. Using chat is not advised because we sometimes miss those chats, so Q&A is the best way to ask us questions. Please note that this session is being recorded. If you or your organization are not comfortable with that, please disconnect. The sessions are also posted to YouTube, and a link to the playlist is on the page where you registered for this session. We'll also revisit it, and you can just go to YouTube, ServiceNow Community, and then where one of the playlists is Performance Analytics Office Hours. Today, we will have Adam Stout giving us some in-depth information on how to make testing perfect. So essentially, he will guide you through a sort of mini getting started with the automated testing framework, and then in the concept of responsive dashboards. And following his basically presentation and demonstration, we will open up the floor for questions. Adam, over to you.
Thanks, David. And just to confirm, you're seeing the presentation now?
I am seeing the presentation.
All right. So today we are going to talk about something new for a lot of us. And how do we test? How do we test new things we're developing? Specifically, we're going to talk about custom development for responsive dashboards. So if I'm creating a custom interactive filter, that's the use case we're going to talk about today, where I really want to automate my testing. We're going to talk about leveraging the automated test framework built into ServiceNow, so you don't need anything extra. So we want to expose you to what you can do and walk you through a little bit how you do it. I will say this is not completely in depth because the automated testing framework is rather extensive, and we'll talk about how you can get some more information. But our goal today is to get you some exposure, and for me, success is if you then go look at some more, take some more training. Let's talk about what we're able to do. So we're talking about what is ATF. I don't know how many of you have used it or heard of it before, but we're going to talk about what it does and doesn't do. How do I get started? And then, much as I always think this is a bad idea, I'm going to do a live demo. We're going to build an ATF test on the fly in this call in a matter of minutes. Okay, so let's talk about what ATF is. So ATF allows us to verify that things are good. And here's an example of a test that we're going to build that allows me to click a button, and I can actually schedule it as well to run this. It is going in and viewing a dashboard. And once that dashboard loads, it's going to look at what's on the dashboard. It's going to put text in the dashboard. It's going to verify that things happen that I expect to happen. And then really importantly, it's going to roll back anything I had to do for that test, or the vast majority of things that I did for that test. That allows me to be confident that what I have works. And that is one of the biggest values that we get from ATF. I don't have to worry about, does it work when I upgrade? Does it work if I make this change? I press a button and I have a result saying, yes, this works. It's also important when things don't go right, when they don't work. And then we'll see something like this, where I'm going to run my test, and then very quickly, it's going to show me a bunch of red saying, this didn't work. And now I know something is wrong and I need to fix it. By clicking a button, I know, does it work or does it not work? And that's a big value for ATF. So again, what is it? So it's a framework. ATF is a framework that lets you create and run the automated tests. A lot of applications come with quick start tests. So if you're using performance analytics, you're using ServiceNow, you're using something else as well. But a lot of our applications and all the new ones come with quick start tests for ATF. So not just responsive dashboards that we're talking about today, but whether it's CSM or ITSM or HR, there are other tests that you can build on as well for all your other customizations. There's different types of tests. There's both UI tests and server-side tests. Both are useful. We need a mix of both of those. And it also allows you to create reusable test steps. So there's several out-of-the-box test steps, and you can also create your own test steps for your custom apps or the things you've extended where you just want to say, do this. You can define with a script what this is, and then from there, you can easily reuse it. So by working with your developers, they can help you create test steps, but then you can have non-technical users create those tests and execute those tests. So why do I want to use ATF? Why does it matter, right? It's something else I have to do, right? I had to create a custom filter and now I have to test it myself. But ATF gives me a lot of peace of mind. It ensures, I use it for unit testing so that when I am working on a filter, I am confident that that filter works. It also allows me to have confidence that when other people are working on things, they're not breaking my stuff. And if I have a custom filter on the change table, well, anytime we're making a change, I should have picked a different table. Anytime we're making a change to change, I can run my tests automated. I don't have to spend hours doing it. I can just press a button, run a test suite, and make sure, yes, when this week's changes go through, my code still all works. So again, that peace of mind, whether I'm working on the custom interactive filter or what it's being filtered, I can make that, I can make sure that everything is still running smoothly. And then the last one is I can detect upgrade issues earlier. So for custom interactive filters, there is a change in Orlando that affects older custom interactive filters that didn't follow best practices. New York and below, you could do something kind of sloppily, but in Orlando, you have to do it the way that it's described in the documentation. When I have ATF in place, I can detect that before I upgrade. I can detect that the first day I upgrade my subprod, I run my ATF tests, and I know I have an issue there, and then I can find and address that. That is much more preferable than if we upgrade, this didn't get tested, and now my customers, something's broken for one of my users, right? Or many of my users. So it lets me know that my stuff works. It lets me know that other people's stuff didn't break mine. And it lets me have the peace of mind that in ServiceNow, as we go through upgrades, all of my custom code still continues to work. And when do I run ATF, right? So along with what it does, I'm going to run it, I'm going to use it in my unit tests. I actually write it before, as I'm going along, or before I try to write my tests, so I know what is right. As I've been using this, I have yet to use ATF where it did not find a problem with my code. I think my stuff is working great, but I write out my tests and I go, yeah, it doesn't support this. Or what should the right answer be? What should it do in this case? Using it with your development is really valuable. And then again, the regression tests, when other code changes, which you may not know affects you or not, this allows me to make sure that those work as well. Instant configurations. So I'm going to change a property. I'm going to activate a new plugin. I'm going to run those there. Now, those are generally low risk, but particularly activating a plugin, if it's interacting with something that's already there, I prefer the peace of mind that I ran my regression test in ATF and all of my code still works the way I think it should. And then of course, with ServiceNow upgrades, you're going to apply a patch, you're going to upgrade to a family release, run your ATF tests. We can test our code, but we can't test your code. This allows you to test your code and make sure that everything is compatible. And it's not necessarily that something's going to break, but that there's some incompatibility, something doesn't work the way you think it would. You were using an undocumented API, something you don't know. This helps you find and identify those very early in your upgrade process rather than later on. So I'm running it all the time for my app development. And if there's any normal changes, I'm running it regularly. And then I'm really going through everything with the fine-tooth comb when I'm going to do an upgrade for ServiceNow. And the testing paradigm. So there are different test tools. There's different things you can do. The way that ATF works, the way that we approach it, a key piece of information is that you do have to know what you're looking for. We don't do a compare pre-post change. So you can't, we don't run everything, save the results, do your upgrade, and then process it. You actually have to say, when I do this, this is what I expect. So that's how it works. And you do need to think about it. I find that really useful. It does require you to think because it's not just simple, tell me if anything's different. You need to be more prescriptive about what is right. The next key thing is that we create new records whenever possible. So I'm going to test an interactive filter. We'll go through this in the demo. When I test my new custom interactive filter, the custom interactive filter is what I'm testing. So I'm definitely going to use that exact same thing. But I'm going to create a new user. I'm going to create a new dashboard. I'm going to put the widget, the existing widget, on the new dashboard in a new tab. So that way I'm not relying on an existing dashboard to be there. That could change from underneath me. I'm not running as a specific user that might get deactivated. So we're going to build new things all the time. And then the ATF framework automatically rolls them back. It captures all the things that you create and it undoes them all. Really, really powerful, built into the platform. We also want to make sure we're testing both positive and negative assertions. So not just does it work, but does it work and does the things it's not supposed to do not work? So if I'm testing something, can this dashboard be shared to this user? Yes, I want to make sure that it works, but I also test a user it should not work for and test that as well. So your tests can get quite extensive because how many ways can it break? You actually want to test them to make sure that something doesn't start working that you weren't expecting to work later on. And a key piece of value for you using the ServiceNow ATF framework, which is included in the platform, is that it knows the objects in ServiceNow. And we're expecting to use that. So we'll see when we look at the test steps, it knows what things are, what a UI action is. So you're not using some third-party tool that is just looking at the interface and doesn't know what it's clicking at, but we say, run this UI action. It knows what a UI action is. So regardless of the browser, of the platform, of the instance version, that will always work. So this saves you a lot of time and headache because you don't have to worry about what is this DOM element called and kind of reverse engineering ServiceNow. You are able to leverage ServiceNow, understanding what ServiceNow is. And there's no other tool that's going to do that. And a couple key things I do want to point out here. There's a bunch of parameters for the ATF. So one of the interesting things with ATF is that my tests are actually going to go to production, but I do not want to ever run my tests in production. I don't want to run my tests in production. We're creating a bunch of new things. So there are properties that exist on all your instances to configure. There's a lot of configuration for the different test properties on what you want to do and a bunch of options that just kind of fit what you're looking for. But the two key ones that are highlighted here is, do I want to run these tests? By default, tests cannot run on an instance. This property has to be checked to yes to enable it to run. So it's possible when in production, it's going to be off. It's definitely going to be off in production. You do not want to run ATF in production. But as I clone down, I might have my clone. This might be persistent, or I might turn this on when I clone to allow certain instances to allow my tests to run. But you have that control. This is not something you have to keep out offline in something else. It goes in your normal update sets. It goes in your normal applications. It moves to production. Those tests are in production. We have a stopper so that we cannot run them in production to cause issues. Okay, so that's what ATF is. And I'll take a quick breather. If anybody has any questions, you can throw them in the Q&A. And if not, we'll move on to how do I get started with ATF. It's great. You all want to use it, and you're going to call me up all hours of the night to go, how do I use it? How do I use it? Let's talk about that. So the first thing is take some training. Again, we're just scratching the surface. There is some very in-depth training in Now Learning. There's lots of stuff available on pretty much everything you want to know about ServiceNow. ATF has its own class, the ATF Fundamentals class. It says it takes 8 hours. There's a lot here. And again, we're doing this in 20 minutes, but there is a lot of training you can go through to understand what's going on. It is self-paced. It is free. I highly encourage it when you want to make the investment into ATF, which I hope you're going to want to after seeing this. Go take the training. You won't regret spending a day understanding what you can do and what your options are and how you can really integrate this into your system, into your process. There's also a micro certification. So once you take the class, you can then test your understanding with a micro certification. I think it's somewhere between 20 and 25 questions, open book, and you have an hour to do it. It shouldn't take you an hour, but you have an hour to do it. As you're looking to integrate ATF into your process, I recommend whoever is running that, getting started, take this training and then ask to see their micro certification, right? Make sure they actually read it. The next part is we're releasing a new project in Share, hopefully later today, that gives you a few additional test steps. So we're going to use these test steps in our ATF test. They are things that you can do without this Share project, but I'll tell you it makes a lot of much easier. So some of the things that this Share project lets you do is create a responsive dashboard. And again, we want to create new things. I don't want to use an existing one because it could change from what I'm expecting. So I'm going to create new dashboard. I'm going to share a dashboard so I can test security. And then I want to add things to the dashboard. I want to add a report, a PA widget, a content block where we're going to be testing interactive filters. So a content block is what we're going to use. The debug widget is important for validating that things work. And then if I have a custom widget that's not a content block, it's not a report, not a PA, I have an option to just add that as well with a couple of properties. You can do all these things, you can script them, but your life will be much easier if you install this helper pack application that's in Share. We'll send out this link, but you'll see the link here as well. It's not available right now, but again, later this afternoon, we expect to publish it. All right, let's get started. Let's do it. So we're going to do a demo. Here's what we're going to do in the demo. We're going to create a test, and then in that test, we're going to create a dashboard, add the filter. So I've already created a filter on my instance. We're going to add the debug filter. And again, those first three things are all very easy to do because I'm adding in the store project, which I've already loaded in that update set. If you don't do that, then if you just go out of box, you won't see the filters, the steps we're using. So add that Share project and you'll see them. And then we're going to open the dashboard form, view the dashboard, add some text to it, submit the filter, and then validate that the filter is applied. This is my one unit test to make sure it does my custom interactive filter work. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing and move over to my browser. So as I'm bringing this up, a question came up about what role is needed for this feature. There are 3 ATF roles that go through in the training, but an admin, a runner, and a designer, I believe, are the 3. So you can grant those as needed. David Thomas, are you seeing my browser?
Yes,
Adam.
yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is what we're going to test. So I'm just going to show you that it actually works. We'll validate that it works. So I have a custom interactive filter that lets me do the search incidents on short description. And I have a report that shows me the number of active incidents. So I'm going to come in and search how many of my active incidents have the word email in it. When I click off of it, it doesn't do anything. I have to click search. So when I click search, I have 19 incidents that are open that have email in it. It's working. Let's validate that this continues to work. Okay, so I'm going to go to automated test. So when I go to the automated test framework, I'm an admin right now, so I'm seeing everything, but I believe test admin would see these same things. I have lots and lots of options. There's lots of things you can do and templates. Again, there's very in-depth training that goes through all of these things. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. We're just going to get this test to work, hopefully. So I'm going to go to tests. Again, this is out of the box. So right now I'm showing 230 tests that come out of the box, testing many different things that you can just use, make sure they work for you. We're going to create a new one because we're creating something very new. So I'm going to go to new, my new test. We're going to do this filter, custom filter test. Good. And one thing to note, I'm actually putting this, I have a custom application, a custom scope that has my interactive filter. I'm putting my tests in that scope. These don't have to go in global. They can go in your applications just like everything else can go in your applications. And we'll save this. So I have a test. Now underneath the test, I need to add the test steps. I'm going to test that my filter works, but now we need to do something. So I'm going to add a test step. And the first thing we're going to do is create a dashboard. So I'm going to go in, again, I have loaded in the project from Share. So under responsive dashboards, out of the box, we have responsive dashboard sharing, responsive dashboard visibility. The project from Share added in these other options. You can also create your own custom ones as well for other things you're doing. These ones are just going to be really reusable for all of us on this call. So I'm going to create a responsive dashboard. And again, I don't have to know a lot to get this to work. What it's going to ask me are the key things to create my dashboard. So this is the first thing it's going to do. I have my order and I can change the order later on. I'm going to give it a name. So my name for my dashboard is my test dashboard. I'm very creative in the morning. The owner, I do need an owner. I'm not going to set it. I'm just going to let it be sysadmin. I don't care. That's not actually part of my test. So sysadmin's fine. And you can specify here, do you want to share this dashboard with certain specific users, with specific groups, with specific roles? So a role, I might not create a new one because I'm actually testing does a role matter, but a group or a user, I can create a new group or user. Those are out of the box tests. So create a user, you want to impersonate the user, all that's already supported. That is not needed for our test. The test we are doing today doesn't have to do with security, doesn't have to do with users. We are just testing, does this filter work? So I'm not going to set anything else. This is all I have to do. So I'm going to submit it. And now I have my new test step. I generally put in notes too that describe it because these create responsive dashboard is not necessarily the most descriptive of what I'm trying to test or what I'm trying to see. So I'll normally want to put notes in, but we'll skip that for right now. So we're going to create a responsive dashboard, and then we need to add the filter to it. The filter I'm going to add is my content block. The filter, the custom interactive filter that I built is a dynamic content block. So I'm going to add a content block after step 1, create the dashboard. Which dashboard do I want to add this to? Well, I actually don't know what the dashboard is. This is a reference, and we're going to create it before. So in ATF, one of the things I'm able to do is instead of I can select an existing dashboard, but again, that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to click on this icon over here, which allows me to get parameters. So from step 1, creating a dashboard returns a reference to that dashboard. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And what it is saying is I'm going to create I'm going to add this widget to this dashboard, which is a variable from my previous one. Now the content block is not a variable. We actually have a very specific content block we want to test. And that is incident short description, right? We saw it before, and I created this before. I want to add this very specific content block that I'm trying to test, incident short description, to that dashboard. Good, next. And now I have that on the dashboard. I want to add the debug widget because that's actually how I'm going to validate, did my interactive filter show it? Because interactive filters, I'll be able to see what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and click next. And again, what dashboard? I want to add it to the same dashboard that we created in step 1. And now we are going to open the dashboard form. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to add a test step. And I am going to go to form, open an existing record. So again, I don't have to know where I'm clicking, what's going on. I just know I need to open an existing record. I'm going to do that after step 3. What record do I want to open? Just checking all the tables right now, which is taking a little bit of time. And I want to point out here, so we have workspace and standard UI. So again, you don't have to worry about what some fully qualified DOM address is of anything. I just want to, in the standard UI, I want to open this record. And again, I could choose, I want to open workspace or the standard UI. The record I'm opening up is in PA dashboards. I want to open a dashboard. There is a warning that if I change this, I actually might have a problem if I'm running in parallel. In this case, it's okay, but the design considerations are important things to read about. What record? Again, dynamic record. So I'm going to open the dashboard that I created here. A view doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And now I want to view it. There is not an out-of-the-box way right now to just say, open this dashboard. So this is how I open a dashboard. I open the record in the form, and then I click on a UI action. So I want to click a UI action after I've opened it. So on the dashboard form, there is a UI action. Which UI action do I want? And it's view dashboard. So we've opened up the form, and now I want to click on view dashboard. And we're testing. Actually, everything as we're going is a test. And we're testing, does it work? Does it not work? Does something reload? In this case, clicking on it is all we need to do, or make sure that it does submit. So I'm now viewing the dashboard, and now I want to add text. This is where it gets pretty exciting to do a live demo, especially. So I'm going to come in and go to custom UI, and I want to set the component values on a custom UI. I have my custom UI is my interactive filter. Oh, so I have not enabled running tests on here, so I'm going to go do that and we'll come back. This is a global setting. So I'm going to go into global. This is not a production instance. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, we're going to run tests. Again, lots of different options on how you see the data, what you want to do. By default, everything should work, but you do have to turn on testing. Okay, and we're going to go back to my test. Going back to my test scope, and now I'm going to go back to my test. So again, we're now on the dashboard, but I want to add text to it. So we are going to go to the custom UI. We're going to set component values. What this needs to do now is read, well, what are the values that are optional? So I'm going to retrieve the components. So as I'm building this, it's going to open up a new window, a test runner. So the test runner is actually using my browser, and it is going to go run through the test steps that I've told it to do. So it has already gone and created my new dashboard. It's added the 2 widgets to the dashboard. It's now on the form, and it is clicking on the view dashboard related link, the view dashboard UI action under related links. And now what it's doing is it pulls up that dashboard. It's going to examine, well, what's available. So we have exactly what we wanted to see. We have the short description, and we have the debug widget. And what it just did is revert. It undid all those things. It removed the tabs. It deleted the dashboard and went back to normal. So it's now retrieved everything. And what it lets me do is go to next. And now it's giving me a list of all the places I can put text. And there's a lot of them on here because the dashboard has a lot of things going on. So we are going to look for the name of where I put in the search text, which is custom filter short description is my name. If I had looked at it before, I'd see it. And what do I want to put in there? And what I'm going to put in there, something really unique in my test. I don't want this to appear by accident. So I'm going to call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, test, 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 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I am hoping that this does not occur naturally somewhere else in my dashboard. And we're going to go and click submit. So we've added the search text. Now I need to filter. So I'm going to go ahead and add another test step. We've set text. Now what we want to do is click a component. I have to click the search button. This is a behavior of my filter, because in my filter itself, I don't do it on change or on focus loss. I have to click a button to submit the filter. So now this is going through, executing the server-side steps. It's done that. It's created the dashboard. It's created the tab, added the widgets to the tab. It's now going to run the UI set of this, because it really needs to see what renders, and it's testing your client-side JavaScript all at the same time. And if you can see quickly, it's gone now, but it put that text into where we want to go to. And so now I've retrieved all the things. I have rolled back. I click on next. And now what we're looking for is I'm actually going to look at what I called it. So search, I should be looking for something called search. I'm just going to check the text of what this is actually called. So it's actually called, it's a button. The button is called add custom filter. So I just forgot what that is. Make sure you have your code ready. So I'm going to add custom filter. That's clicking the button. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to add another test step, which is to validate that the debug filter, that it actually shows up in the debug filter. This is really the final validation. So we are going to assert text on a page. And the text that we're going to assert, I'm actually going to do it on here. I'm going to copy and paste exactly what I want to see so that there is no accident in this. I am going to manually go through and add the debug widget here. Okay, well, it's not letting me do that. So I'm going to assert the text that I put in, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, test, 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 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now there is a trick here, because this, we are looking for text on a page. It's actually, in this case right now, it's actually going to show up because we typed this text in. What I really want to put in here, and it's just not letting me do right now. I'll try one more thing. There we go. I actually want to make sure that the debug filter text is exactly correct. So I'm going to put in the text. When I click search, this is what I want to see. Exactly this. So I'm actually going to search for just this string, because this tells me if I see short description like, that things are working. I could look for this whole string, but this is enough, because I'm only typing in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I see short description like that text, it means it's working. So we're going to make sure that that's there. I'm going to submit. So we're done. We built our test. Now I want to run it. So I'm going to run the test. It's going to ask me which browser to pick. So I, in this session, have created a test runner. We launched a client test runner in Chrome, but I could run this in Firefox, in Edge, in Safari, whatever you have on your instance. I'm going to run the test. And we're seeing it's executing on the server. So it's creating the dashboard, creating the tabs, adding the widgets, all those steps that we put in. Then it's going to go to the UI side. And on the UI side, it's brought up the form. This will go quick. It is putting in the text. It's clicking search. It's now looking for the text in the debug filter. And once it's found that, it's going to come back and revert. Just stay over here till it's finished. Okay, it's done. It's now reverting. Oh, it didn't like something. We're not going to completely debug it, but let's take a look at what's going on. I'm going to go to the result. So when I look at this result, so it didn't find this text. So it should have, so I might have something quite a little bit wrong with the test or something's going on. But what I get here is still really valuable for me. So we've seen that this took 30 seconds when I ran it, that it failed. I have all the things that did work, and then when did it fail? So if I didn't find my text because I changed the name of my button or something else, you'd see where it failed. It has everything that it did in the background to actually create my records and close them and do everything it needed to do. A pretty detailed log about where it's going and what's going on in the instance if you do need to debug. Where we tested it, why it failed, and then screenshots all along the way. One of the options is, should I take screenshots when it works, or should I take screenshots only when it fails? So it's all the time or just on failure. One of the things that I like to do is to personalize this form in the global and actually add these as a list so I can view them all really easily. But we'll go ahead and view what failed. So it tells me this is what failed. I can click on that. And I don't know if you're going to see what's shared here, but it has a screenshot of what it saw, which actually looks like it should be there. But I have, again, pictures. It's taking pictures all along the way to see what did you see and what didn't you see. You can roll these tests. These tests will normally go into test suites. So when I have a suite, I can then build up all of my tests inside of it. So I can have my text search test, but I can roll that into a custom filters test, which I can roll into my responsive dashboard suite, which I can roll into my full regression suite. So again, with one button, I can run the test suite and it just goes through everything as fast as it can and get those answers and let me know where am I at, right? I want to see a lot of green. And if not, just point me exactly to where it's failing. And I don't have to recreate it. I can go straight in, look at that test, look at those screenshots, maybe run the test again and make sure it's succeeding now or it's failing. When I make the fix that I need to fix, I can then run that test again, make sure it's running, and then run the full test suite. A couple buttons and you have peace of mind. Okay, so let's go back. All right, we're seeing PowerPoint again? I'll take that as a yes.
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 Great. Okay, so we went back in the demo as we went through these test steps to create our single test that was testing does it work, which actually failed in this case, but it allows us to go back and see what's going on. I have to build something to test, right? We can't underestimate that. I am testing custom development here. So I had a dynamic content block, which was just some JavaScript and some jelly to give me what we were looking at. Then I went through and created my test where I went through all the different test steps. Again, to make this really simple, I wanted to use the project from Share. And then all I had to do was fill out the form. You saw through all this testing, we actually didn't write any code. All we did is said, I want a dashboard that does this. I want to share it with this group. And I can create a user, add them to a certain group, and then validate, can that user see this? I could remove them from the group and then validate, can they not see it now? 2 really good tests. And then we're passing that information on in variables. So it knows that this test step returns a dashboard. When I create a user, I get the sysid of a dashboard. Okay, and then we'll wrap up this and get to your questions. We'll post these links in the wrap up with this, but there's a lot of reference for you to see here. So one, you'll get the link to the dashboard test steps to load those in. And as a note, there are 2 update sets that are a part of this project. One is global. To interact with the dashboards, we actually have to install a global update set, a global script include, and then all of the test steps are in a scoped app. There's no new tables, so there's no licensing implications with this. This should just help you out. Training, there's that fundamentals, the ATF fundamentals that has a microcert that goes along with it in Now Learning That's available to you. A couple labs, a great one on ATF from K20. That's only about an hour long or an hour and a half long. So you can do that as well. Do both, do one. The training and now learning is considerably longer than just the knowledge lab, but you get a lot more out of it. There is a ton of depth in ATF. And then we talked about custom interactive filters. There's a lab on that from K19 that's available to you as well. And then lots of documentation. So ATF has a lot of documentation, interactive filters, custom interactive filters, the debug filter, and then just general script includes a couple of key pieces of docs that would help you walk through this. Okay, so let's get to your questions. So a question came in about used ATF for the health dashboards. So the health dashboards actually can't predate ATF. So we test those with a different framework that doesn't ship with it. In our testing, we test a lot of the Java side too. So we have a little bit more in-depth framework. We use this to some extent, but that requires a lot of infrastructure and a lot. It's pretty in-depth with our QE department. ATF is a little bit lighter weight, but allows you and your business users to do the testing you need to have. You absolutely could create these CMDB, the health dashboards. You could test those in here. And if you are customizing them, then you do want to do that. You absolutely want to do that to make sure your customizations don't break. Again, really important if you're using undocumented APIs that you found somewhere or something else, right? Anything you're writing, behaviors change. We upgrade versions of other libraries. So whether it was high charts or it's some JavaScript library that is upgraded over time, if you are writing custom code, you want to write an ATF test to go with it. If you're not using some other testing framework, however, I don't know of a better testing framework for custom ServiceNow code. And we did talk about, we focused in on the responsive dashboards, the client side. But if I'm writing a script include, I'm doing the same thing. If I'm writing a dynamic filter option, we talked about that a few weeks ago. You want to write an ATF test that's just simply testing, does my script include return what I think it should return, right? I want one that returns just managers. So if I want to have that, then I just, on the server side, you can write scripts that just call your script includes and make sure, I inserted this user, I get that user back. I deleted that user, I don't get any users back. All that stuff can be built into ATF as well. And again, this isn't a good thing about my coding practices, but ATF always finds issues in my code, no matter how good I think it is. When I write the tests and go through all of the edge cases, I always find something that I'm missing. So it's pretty essential to having me have quality code. Can ATF test widgets and indicators and breakdowns? How do I use this with PA? So we did focus this on responsive dashboards and custom interactive filters. You can do this with everything else with PA. We're looking into actually writing some more of that in to things like run a job and make sure the job runs. Most of PA's functionality we're testing, so you don't have to worry about it. If you're just configuring something, you normally don't have to test it, right? And we can test it. We should test it. We're responsible for fixing it. Where ATF really comes into play is when you're customizing. And customizing meaning you're writing new script includes, you're writing new business rules, you're modifying the form. When you're doing all those things, writing dynamic content blocks, client script, you wrote it, you need to test it because we just simply don't have access to it. But does the job run? We test those things. Does the breakdown matrix actually exclude things? We test those. Does collecting records collect records? We test that. That's not to say you can't, but you do need to, I don't think you need to in most cases, unless you're doing something pretty special. One area that I would that we're looking at, how do we make it easier to test, would be PA scripts, right? PA scripts, you're writing that logic. So how are you able to test that? You can do it today. ATF allows you to run server scripts. You can write anything, but we are looking at how do we make it easier for you to do that? Because I do know the answer is if it's not easy to do, you don't do it. I didn't ask how many people on this call are running ATF today, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer. But we want to make it easy. We want to empower the business users to do it. We want to empower you to do it. And I want to give you that peace of mind, because I'll tell you, I have it. When I run these tests, I know my code works. I'm not worried about getting a call, after we did an upgrade at 2 in the morning on a Saturday, because something's not working right and it needs to be working by Monday morning. Security does work. So you can test anything, right? Anything that you can click on or anything that you can do on the server side, you can test. Most of ATF, you can click to impersonate a user, so I can create a user and impersonate them. So if I wanted to test element security, dashboard security, that the responsive visibility is actually, that does come out of the box. So you certainly can create a user, put them in a group, and validate, can they view this dashboard? Again, I've never seen that break, because normally it's some nesting group or a person didn't get the role that they were supposed to get, right? Or the role wasn't assigned to the group correctly. That comes though from using ATF to test your workflows, to test your employee onboarding, to test your service catalog items. If you're testing everything, then you're going to have a lot less of those problems. The problems I see with security are typically a process breakdown somewhere along the way. So yes, you can test it, but I'm not sure you're going to find something. But if you'd like to do it, especially if you want to get your hands dirty and try something, go at it. Go look at what's there and see what will help you sleep better at night. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions about ATF, we can open it up to any other questions you have about any other topic. And if something comes to mind about ATF, go ahead and throw it in the Q&A.
Adam, do you think it's the ATF becomes more relevant as you mature in the use of the ServiceNow platform, or is this for any user, any maturity level?
That's a very interesting question. I think it's probably more important the more immature you are, but it's always important. Anytime you're writing custom stuff, and again, I'm not creating a new indicator. I don't need to test that, but I'm writing a scripted indicator, a scripted mapping. I'm writing a client script or a custom interactive filter. That's where this really becomes essential, because most of the customers I talk to, they're manually testing at best. And I know if you're just manually testing, it means you're not testing, right? You test it when you wrote it, but nobody has the time to go through 1,000 dashboards and make sure are they using anything custom, and is it working, and is it working for you? This allows me to make sure everything works. And my philosophy is I'm not as upset if it breaks once. I'm upset if it breaks twice in the same way, right? So if I do find an issue with it, then I'm going to go through my tests and make sure that they're right. But simply going through the thought exercise of writing your test for your custom code makes your code better. It just makes it better. Okay.
We got some more questions in. Maybe Dario first. On the demo,
Yes.
In the instructions for the test, did you also add the step to add the report to the dashboard where the filter was going to search?
Good question. So I actually did not add the report because you don't need to. We're not validating the report. Wonderful question. So when I did the demo at the beginning, I threw a report on there. It had 460 incidents. I applied my filter and I got 19. In theory, I could look and go, is it 19, right? I could instead of adding the debug filter, I could add that report and verify, are there 19? The problem is that 19 is actually kind of hard to figure out. As a human, you can read it. When I'm clicking through the UI things, it's hard to tell where that number is. And even with that, I'm scared of that, because that 19 could change for many, many reasons on my subprod, right? There's now 20. There's a new incidents come in my clone data. So there's a lot of variables in there that could make it look like it broke, even though it didn't break. I could get around that if I created a bunch of incidents. If I created an incident that had the word, this is a test, this will never exist in reality. I created an incident that has that as the short description. And then my filter searches for that text in the short description. Then I'd see 1 or not 1, or 1 or 0. I could do that. The debug filter, I find it to be the easiest way, because you actually see what the filter is. You can see, are my mappings working correctly? So the debug filter is what gives me insight into it working. Now, it didn't work in my demo for some reason, but that's in real life, when I write this, I use the debug filter. That tells me it's being applied. Again, I'm not going to test, was the report listening? Do reports handle that? but because I trust ServiceNow tests that. If I have a filter, does it apply correctly? ServiceNow tests that. The custom part of this code, the smallest part that I wrote was, do I get this into dashboard message handler, right, for the custom interactive filter? So I didn't, it was easier for me to see it, but in the demo, but in actually in my test, I lean very heavily on the debug filter. Okay, a couple more questions came in about integrations. Sure, you can use it in integrations. ATF works extremely well when you're testing. There's some REST things that come in, but testing server-side code is very clean, very easy to get it to do exactly what you want. If you notice, the longest part, when we were building this test, I mean, I think we built it in under 10 minutes. The longest part of the test was when I had to run through the test to go, well, what's on the screen? What things do I want to see? That does take some time because you have to run through everything. You have to build it. We have to parse it all. But on the server side, you don't have to do that. The server side runs, I think a whole server side part of this, which was actually more of our test, took less than a second to run. And then the other part took 29 seconds. So anything you can do on the server side, you can test. It works exceptionally well. And will there be more pre-built ATF, like the content packs? Probably. So we released the share for responsive dashboard. It's a very much an ongoing discussion for us. As we're giving you more abilities to build things, we want to give you the ability to test things. And just very simply, it is in ServiceNow's best interest, as well as yours, but it's in our best interest to make sure your code doesn't break, right? So we want to give you all the tools and guidance so that you can make sure that your code works, so you don't call us, because we have a very vested interest in your success. And if your custom code doesn't work, you're probably going to call support. We're going to have a hard time debugging it. It's just a bad situation. So the more tools, the more things we can give you to test, the better off we are. We want you to use it. We want you to want to use it. And it's good, right? Purpose of today was just to get you guys thinking about it. How can you use it? Okay. And the share projects, I appreciate it. We are looking to release some of the stuff in share when it's, that can happen. So you'll see a lot of stuff in store coming out across all of ServiceNow, and share is there as well. If you don't look at share, there's a lot of really interesting things in there, a lot of snippets, maybe a single script include to help you out. So as you look at store goes through more testing, more scrutiny. It's more supported. In share, it's actually not supported by us, and you'll see the disclaimer about that. But there's some really interesting things in share. And if you're looking at, which you'll find if you go to share.servicenow.com, you're in share. A lot of great stuff in there. And if you're building something, or you're thinking about building something, some utility, take a look and share, because it may not be there, but maybe 90% of what you want is there. So lots of good stuff. And differences in Orlando and New York. I did do this in Orlando. I'm not aware of any changes between Orlando and New York, or Paris for that matter. I believe everything we did, once you add in the share project, should work back through probably even Madrid, maybe before that. ATF's been around for a while. The biggest changes you see with ATF is that they go along with the version. So if there's a change to how we insert records or something, ATF is versioned with the families. And then the test steps are the biggest things. And those test steps, everything I wrote should work fine with Orlando. I tested it in Orlando. It should work fine in New York. Make sure it's in share. We didn't go through full regression testing. So if it works, then go ahead and apply it in New York. It should work. And if not, ping me in the community. Put a comment in and share. And I'll try to get this to work in New York. I don't know why it would not work. Also with share, make sure, even if you don't install it now, maybe go look at share, subscribe to it. Share is a mechanism where if we add new test steps, if we fix an issue, so this is compatible in London and it wasn't compatible in London, or we need to fix it in Paris. Again, I only did this in Orlando. Share is versioned. So as we put the new versions out there, if you're subscribed, you'll get an update saying, hey, there is a new version to make this work in Paris. So make sure that if something's interesting you in share, that you subscribe to it. You can leave your comments in there, leave your ratings. It's a kind of a win-win for all of us. But again, it's not officially supported. It's not like it's coming straight from the store. So we're here to help, but you will have limited support as it goes forward. Okay, we have just a couple minutes. If there's anything else, we can answer it. If not, David, do you have the closing part of the deck?
I do, and I'll try to hit the space bar this time.
Okay.
Actually, show some slides.
And I'll hit it back over to you, David.
Yeah, if there are no more questions this week, then we'll close it off nicely in time. So let me just share my screen and start clicking away. All right. All right, thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. That would be July 15th, if I'm not mistaken. What?
I see it now.
Not true? You see it?
Yeah.
All right, good. That was an empty slide. That was my starting slide. So as you may or may not be aware, but all Knowledge 20 labs, or almost all, are available in Now Learning, including those for the Now Intelligence products. So everything around reporting, performance analytics, dashboards, even predictive intelligence are available through Now Learning. And the biggest benefit is that you get to go and watch the presentation on it, on each lab, and you can actually do the lab. You will be assigned an instance. The instance will be made available for you for the time that you get allotted. I think it's 3 days. And then you can do all the exercises. And all the exercises are also explained through a series of videos. So don't forget to basically brush up your skills and expand your knowledge with this free content. Upcoming sessions and the list in the article on the Now community. And as you know, all previous recordings are also posted to YouTube and PA office hours. And we still need your help, right? We still want to know what topics you would like to have discussed during office hours. So don't be shy. There's an article on the community that really deserves some extra comments. So thanks for your help. All right, actually we just did this. So this is for this week's placeholder. Next up is actually Adam. Do we already know what the next topic?
I think we were still deciding that. So we'll
maybe
get that
SLA metrics. That would be a nice one, huh?
I love SLAs.
SLA and metrics, yes. Who doesn't love them? So thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day, and see you next time.